Okay, today we're going to be going over the Fiber Tribe graduated scaling method. This is how to take your apparel and footwear e-commerce brand and how to scale it profitably. So let's go through what's kind of impacting us in 2024. First of all, you guys may be aware of what's going on with apparel and footwear in terms of consumer spending. Clothes and shoes are one of the top items that gets cut when overall cost of living increases. So this is one of the things consumers are spending a lot less money on. So if you're seeing your growth impacted and you're unsure whether it's Meta or whether it's AI or all these recent changes, it could very well be the market. So one of the things to consider, because it is such a competitive, saturated market, apparel and footwear both being extremely competitive and saturated, and it is simply one of the first costs that gets cut. This is why your brand has to be uniquely positioned to your competitors and not reliant on just a single revenue stream. And just a brief introduction about myself. I help scale apparel brands and really focused on profitable scaling. We don't really do scaling by force. We see this a lot in the market, but usually it doesn't work, the way intended, and it ends up impacting cash flow significantly. So the model we use, which we call the graduated scaling method, with all of our clients, the kind of results that we get are, 72% increased ROAS, 129% increased profit. Generally, we have about a 15% MER with the brands that we work with, and $145 average order value. If you want to get in touch with me, I've got my email in here. I've also got my information at the end of this webinar, but feel free if you have any questions or anything you want to reach out, just let me know or send me an email. So what is the graduated scaling method? Who is it for? Basically, for brands large and small, there may be different reasons, why you're applying the graduated scaling method. When you're just starting out as a startup, as a growing brand, you're probably just laying the product and brand foundation and trying to figure out your product market fit, and trying to, get in position for sustainable growth. If you're, under 100K in sales per month, at this point, you're looking to really perfect your systems and scale them in a way where you're not getting suffocated by those increasing acquisition costs. And if your acquisition costs just keep rising, it's quite likely that you're trying to force the scale and you need to maybe take a pause and relook at the system. And if you've passed those, revenue benchmarks and you're a larger brand, often, especially right now in this market, you're looking for those cost efficiencies, ways of getting your MER down, and making sure that you're profiting on the first sale and not just completely reliant on those secondary purchases. So depending on where you're at, you may have different KPIs and tactics that you're looking at, but the graduated scaling method actually serves purpose for all three stages, no matter where you're at. And just as a quick refresher, there isn't an e-commerce silver bullet. Some brands are just going to struggle because they just don't have the right product market fit, right? Two of the main things that we see where brands are doing very well is, number one, they have really dialed in their product market fit. And so they have that unique position, and that goes beyond just their marketing, but in the features and benefits of their product. Having a functional aspect to their brand, to their product, makes a huge difference. And we're seeing that a lot, especially this year and last year, in terms of the brands that are getting the highest performance, highest ROAS, generally are the ones that have that truly unique position in their product market fit. And secondly, the ones that are performing really well are doing 10 times the volume of execution. And I know for startups, this can be really hard because you have a small team, very difficult to manage that. But we do see that the brands that are really successful are the ones that are executing frequently, quickly, and iterating, and they're doing much more in terms of volume. So if you're just running like one ad, one campaign, and you're wondering why it's not working, that might be your first thing, is just get more volume, and that's going to help you actually get to figuring out your main challenges. Or you can consult with an expert as well, of course. But that would be an easy solution, is just increase your volume. When it comes to e-commerce brands in apparel, there's some major killers of those brands, and these are some of them. That lead to high MER, which is marketing efficiency ratio for those of you unfamiliar, and essentially low profits as a result of that. So marketing efficiency ratio is basically if you're doing 100K on Shopify and your acquisition costs are 15,000 overall, then you've got a 15% MER. And that's just a very, very basic overview. That's essentially it. And these are some of the reasons why your brand might not be scaling. So number one, low conversion rates. Number two, low average order value. This is one we see all the time. Number three, low return on ad spend. And number four, low returning customer percentage. Number five, high MER or low profit. It's challenging to scale when you don't have the profit to reinvest into the growth. Growth is very expensive. And, if you're struggling to maintain your costs low and you have to have, a very high MER in terms of your overall marketing expense, that can be a very challenging position for startups. Even for larger brands, but they have more that they can cut. So, you got to make sure that all of your KPIs are in the right place before you're starting to scale or push for that scale. What's really happening here is number one, if you've got low conversion rates, you probably have a poor product market fit. Maybe you're not communicating it properly through your landing page or through your website. Maybe you just have nothing unique. We see this all the time. We have a ton of brands reaching out to us, looking for support, but at the end of the day, fundamentally, they have nothing that makes their brand unique in terms of functional benefits of the product, brand positioning. It's a competitive market, so you have to be truly unique, and you have to have some kind of compelling offer, right? If you have no structured offer, then this is going to be a challenge to generate that urgency for the customers to make a purchase. So if there's nothing unique and you don't have a unique offer, then that's going to be a challenge. So very important, number one and two, product market fit and having a structured offer. Number three, unclear customer acquisition process. So, if you don't have a process for your customer acquisition and you're just putting ads up on Meta and that's kind of it, you need to go and revisit this, because you need to have a much more sophisticated process. Yes, Meta does a lot of the work, these days in terms of supporting that, but this is about making sure you're getting horizontal scale, not just vertical scale, before you're pushing for that growth, things like that. Number four, leaky retention practices. So, if you're having challenges with your customer retention, this is another area where it's very challenging to get your profit, right? Because that means you have to be profitable on the first sale. And that's obviously ideal, is getting profit on the first sale. But if you also can't get profit on the first sale and you have no retention, then you're losing money pretty badly. Scaling by force. This is actually one of the ones that we see most commonly, is brands that are just, they're impatient. They're just trying to scale. They're not willing to take the time to build the foundation, and they lose a lot of money this way, right? It's bad for the cash flow. When you scale by force, what happens is, you see, oh, we've got one winning ad. Awesome. Let's take that from whatever, $20, $30, $40, $50 a day and just keep increasing the media spend. Problem is, when you do that and you're scaling vertically, your ROAS is going to go down. It always does. In very few situations does the ROAS, stay high, even if you have that winning ad. And so this is where you're going to have a challenge just trying to pump media into it and scale it by force, because you're going to lose your profitability. Now you're going to have more work, more orders, and you're going to have less profit at the end of the day. So you got to make sure the timing is right before you just push for that scale. Just to reiterate, if you're scaling before you're ready, it's going to lead to lower results. By following the right process, you're going to end up doing way less work and you're going to get more out of it. So you have to be patient, but you also need to make sure that you have the right process that you're following. Now, there's an old way of doing this, which is how a lot of brands were doing this previously. You might remember there's been tons of single product websites from a few years ago where Meta was, this is pre-iOS 14. Brands were printing money with single product websites, and they didn't have to have a brand because the algorithm was just that good and there was little competition. And so you would just source a product, run some ads, scale the spend, duplicate your ads, and you're good. And then basically now you just got to try and fulfill that. But you could scale very quickly within a span of a couple of weeks doing that. And things have changed. It's just not the way it works anymore these days. It's much more competitive now, and you need to have a unique position and a unique brand to make that work. So the new way of doing it is focusing on a proper process, having product optimization, focusing on your acquisition process, your retention process, and then scaling that when you have the right KPIs and not before that. So this creates predictability, and you know how and exactly why your brand scales. So getting into some of the details of our apparel graduated scaling method, we have 5 stages to it. I just went over those quickly. So product optimization, marketing foundation, acquisition, retention, and scaling. I didn't talk about marketing foundation just yet, but that's an important one that we'll get to. Now, if you do these properly, here's the outcome. Stage 1, you're going to have a much better conversion rate, right? If your product is well optimized in terms of being unique in the market, having that market fit, the product market fit, you're going to have a much better conversion rate. So if you're struggling on Shopify and you've got like a 0.5 or a 1% conversion rate, this is an area you likely need to focus, whether it's through improving the product, better perceived quality in terms of price, value, etc. Or it could be that you're not selling it well in your ads or in your landing pages, right? So if you do this well, you're going to have a higher conversion rate. We like to see brands having a conversion rate of over 2%. And then you know that you're doing well. With stage 2, revenue consistency. So when you have the right process, when you have the right marketing foundation, you're going to have revenue consistency. So what a lot of brands see is these up and down, scale up, scale down, over and over again with your e-commerce revenue. And what happens is, maybe every couple months there's a big promotion, Black Friday, something else, Mother's Day, whatever. And so your sales are going to be dictated by those promotional periods or the seasonality of it. And we need to smooth that out because it's very difficult to function, keep a functioning business with these major up and down swings. So having the right marketing foundation allows us to have a more consistent scale rather than, the major up and down swings. Stage 3, having a sustainable ROAS. This is just a matter of getting your acquisition funnel right in terms of your ad creatives, the different channels that you're utilizing, how you're scaling horizontally, not vertically. And so there's a lot of different pieces to that, but if you get it right, then you're going to have, that sustainable ROAS. Stage 4 is retention. So if you do this right, you're going to have more returning customers. You're going to have a lower MER as a result, higher profitability. A lot of the brands that we work with, they have 30 to 40% returning customers. And if you're a newer brand, obviously you're not going to have that. And that's one of the biggest challenges of newer brands is building that email database, building those returning customers. But if you have, that 30 to 40% returning customer, you've got your email database dialed in, then, you can acquire a customer for, $2 to $5 on email versus, maybe $25 on your ad campaigns. So really important to get that dialed in, but these are sequential stages, right? So you want to make sure that stage 1 is dialed in before we move on to stage 2, before we move on to stage 3, before we move on to stage 4. So, there's no point in working on your retention if you haven't got your product figured out yet. And then stage 5 is scaling. So, this is where a lot of people want to put scaling at like stage 2, where it's like, okay, I've got my product. Let's run some campaigns. I've got one winning ad. Let's scale that. But it's too soon. You have to make sure you build out the full system. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to scale profitably and efficiently. Okay, so stage 1, product optimization. Here are the main areas that we look at. So number 1, perceived value. Number 2, brand positioning. 3, social proof. And 4 is website user experience. When you get those right, then your product is going to have a really solid position and you're going to have a much higher conversion rate, right? So perceived value goes into things like exclusivity, price versus quality. So, how are we positioned versus our competitors? What is our quality like? What is our price like in comparison to them? Brand positioning looks at things like, what's your style? What are your features and functions? What are your messaging pillars? So we go through and we basically audit all of these. So, if we're going to score ourselves out of 10, and you can do this yourself, you can score yourself on these. and look at what's missing and where do we need to fill the gap. Social proof, this is essentially trust. If you're not building trust and you're a new brand, or I mean, even an existing brand, you have to build trust. You have to show, proof of life through your product reviews, UGC, social feed. We see a lot of our highest performing ads say things like, we have over 10,000 5-star reviews, things like that. So, if you have the social proof, you got to utilize it. And if you don't have it, you have to get creative and find ways to do that, whether it's through influencer relationships and UGC or other ways to get that process going. Website user experience, goes without saying, has to be fully dialed in. And this is everything, down to from the website homepage down to the PDP, make your product display page, making sure that you've got the right product shots, and that you're answering all of those buyer questions, making sure that you're leaving kind of no stone unturned when it comes to addressing questions that the consumer might have. Okay, so stage 2, which is the marketing foundation. This is the cadence required of the execution, right? So we talked about getting rid of those hills and valleys. And this is about setting up the foundation so that we have, consistent execution, and we have a plan to make sure that that revenue is somewhat steady in terms of the growth. Now, when it comes to analytics, targets, and marketing plan, this means, having all of your tracking in place, having your reporting in place, channel attribution, right? So you don't want to be looking at a ROAS cross-channel where the combined ROAS is much lower. That can be very ruinous to your growth if you're not aware of that, if you're already using multiple channels. Targets for things like net sales, ROAS, MER, and really looking at industry benchmarks because it's very different in apparel and e-commerce and footwear, right? So we have to make sure we're using industry benchmarks. And marketing plan in terms of your media plan, seasonal and sales promotional calendar, your content calendar, your brand guidelines. So these are things that allow for consistent execution. So if we're not planning ahead in terms of, what our seasonal promotions are going to be at the beginning of the season, at the end of the season, for, specific holidays, things like that, then those things are going to be last minute. They're just not going to be as effective, or we might miss them altogether, right? When we get too busy. So we have to make sure that we have a full marketing plan, 12-month marketing calendar. And these things are, ideally we're planning months in advance so that we can not execute in a last minute fashion. Now, stage 3 is acquisition. So this is where we have, our social ad stack, we have our brand ambassador program, our programmatic ad stack, and our search ad stack. So the brand ambassador program is actually really important. This is where, we want to leverage things like white label ads with creators, especially when we're smaller, but you can also do this with tools like Leadsy. You can do this at scale with a larger brand as well. And these generally do see a higher ROAS than just your regular ads. Social ad stack. So we want to make sure that we're leveraging all of the different types of auctions, not just one specific, not just UGC video, for example. We want to make sure we're leveraging all of our auctions. Usually the most profitable is the dynamic product ads. We want to make sure that we have, a dynamic catalog where we're leveraging dynamic creative as well. These are all different things where if we're placed into all those auctions, we're going to get the best cost based on the real-time bidding that's going on within Meta. And programmatic ad stack. So we don't necessarily want to have a major spend in programmatic, but having this as a secondary platform can really help with our ROAS as well, as long as it's set up in the correct way. Search ad stack as well. So, branded, performance max, shopping, competitor ads, all of those should be standard for all of the apparel and footwear brands. And then, when we've got our acquisition funnel dialed in, we're going to have a consistent ROAS that's going to be profitable, right? So we're hoping for like a 3, a 4, a 5x. We've recently launched some campaigns with a 5% lookalike of a US audience that are getting like a 5x ROAS on cold audiences. So you need to make sure that you have those cold audiences being profitable and that you're not just feeding off of the remarketing list, right? It's got to be cold audiences being profitable with the ROAS. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to scale. So then moving on to stage 4, retention. If you've got your email list already built, perfect. Your email, your SMS, making sure you have all your flows set up. We're a Klaviyo partner. Klaviyo is always our recommended platform. But there's lots of different ways you can do this. Making sure you've got your weekly, and more frequently if you've got a larger email list, having your weekly email flows, and having your customer service automated and dialed in as well. Retargeting offers. So you could do things like email retargeting off of anonymous visitors. You could do postal code retargeting, where you're literally sending people postcards in the mail off of your anonymous visitors on your website, making sure you've got omni-channel remarketing in place. So all of these things designed to bring up your returning customer percentage. Okay, and then moving on to stage 5 scaling. So this is where we want to make sure we're looking at all avenues. So things like different marketplaces. Are we leveraging Amazon, eBay, Walmart, TikTok Shop, offline retail channels? These things can all benefit the e-commerce sales. New product launches and collections. So we want to make sure that we have consistent offers, driving urgency, new product launches. These things are going to keep our brand relevant and driving new revenue for the brand. Scripts and automations. How do we scale up our spend while making sure that things are automated in a way so that we don't have costly mistakes? Private customer auctions. So I mentioned launching cold audiences with a 5% lookalike and getting a 5x ROAS on that. This is one way you can do that by layering your, for example, taking your existing checkout customers and layering that with metadata from Amex Black Card users, and then rolling that out as a new audience. That's going to be a very good way to do a lookalike, and it's going to be a very profitable audience for you. AI applications, so things like marketing mix modeling, dynamic catalog creative testing, predictive modeling, and conversion rate optimization. So these are all the things you want to be looking at in terms of keeping your costs down as you scale. Okay, let's move on. So what happens when you implement this system? Well, for those who are implementing the graduated scaling method, these are the kinds of results you can see. It's not, you're not going to go from 0 to 100 overnight, but you have the ability to scale consistently, 200K go to 400K per month, right? And more. So every business is at a different scale, but these methods apply regardless of where you're at in your life cycle. We've been able to work with brands like UFOS, where we had a 24x ROAS on their overall marketing spend. One of the reasons UFOS does so well is because they've got their product market fit dialed in, right? And this leads to a much more successful marketing system overall. Bionic Shoes is another great example of having a really dialed in product market fit, having really strong functional benefits of the product, and that's going to lead to a much higher ROAS as a result. Now, if you want more apparel and e-com info like this, hit me up on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there, send me a DM. You can also reach out to me by email. I'm happy to provide a free strategy workshop. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You can fill in our contact form at fibertribe.io or send me an email.